And we're live. Good morning. How are you guys going? Thanks for stopping by. Just setting up the chat and we are good to start. All right. Hang on, I can see the chat. All right, cool. Yep, so I can see it on the screen. Hey Khalil, how's it going? Awesome. All right. Let me know, guys, if you can hear me and see the screen and everything. All good. I haven't changed anything since the last stream, so should be okay. All right. Let me just get a couple of things out of the way first, just because I wanted to thank you all because of the creature pack. And in case you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm just gonna mention it really quick here. Hey Giuseppe, how's it going? I just wanna go to the ZBrush Central, where I put a little update on how we're going with the recollection of money for the Australian bushfires. So Pixologic guys were very kind to put this one in the top row as well, the IMM creature pack. So if you go to the ZBrush Central right now, it's this one right here. And yeah, so this one goes through the pack that we already talked about. We actually created a creature last stream, which I just updated it. Let me see. This one here. So we made this entire thing in inside ZBrush, a little bit of Polypaint at the end, and we did that with the creature pack. And I just did an update, so we have collected about $3 grand. So that's pretty amazing. So I just wanted to thank everyone that has been buying the pack. So hopefully you're enjoying the actual meshes and the tools, but you know, the whole idea of this is just to be able to collect a juicy amount of money so that we can send to the Australian the Country Fire Authority in Australia, just to help fight the devastation. Yeah, so just wanted to give you an update. We're doing great, and we have about 10 days to go. This is a temporary pack, in case you didn't know. So once the I think I have actually a timer in the website. So once this time passes, because obviously this is a time sensitive thing, once the time passes, then the pack is going to be gone and you won't be able to get it anywhere anymore. Also because it is a collaboration between me and other ZBrush artists that were very kind to share some of their knowledge and their work and their meshes. So you have about 10 days if you haven't got it. Anyway, just wanted to get that out of the way, and thank you all for collaborating. It's very kind of you. Okay, let me just get this out of the way. Cool. And let's jump straight into what we're going to be doing today. See the chat. Adam, so today we're going to continue working on the Cassowary. This is something that we started a couple of streams ago. We just did this rough sketching. This is still a Sculptris Pro Dynamesh type of thing. So I'm just gonna try to polish this, add a little bit more of the secondary forms, very basic stuff. Then we're gonna do a remesh, a very quick remesh, a reprojection. We're gonna do some details and polypaint. That's the idea. So a lot of things to pack in today. So we're gonna do, I'll try to talk less and actually show you stuff. But yeah, so we have a few things to go through today. Hopefully we can get this to a stage that I'm happy with, and we can call it finished. Hey Chubby Fox, how's it going? Pablo Carvalho, hola, boa noite. Boa noite. Boa noite. Hey Pablo, good night. Cool. Oh, so most people are here. It's night for you, right? I guess. One question: can we use this pack for commercial? Yeah, you can use it for anything. Obviously, you cannot resell it, but you can just build your creature and for commercial use. There's just the parts, and they're decimated anyway. But yeah. All right, so let's go ahead and jump straight into it. So what we have here is just a set of 3 subtools: the eyes, the wrinkles here in the skin, like they're very prominent, and the whole neck, head, and the top part, like this protrusion of the skull, the horn, I don't know, the crest. that's the one. So the reason I separated these ones at the back from the body is just because I wanted to do it, being able to manipulate them a little bit easier with the move topological. So this actually, this is something that we did in the last, at the end of the last, well, at the end of the last stream that we worked on the Cassowary. It's basically a series of two brushes, and then I went with the move topological that obviously respect the continuity of the topology and move things around so that they look kind of like, you know, they're overlapping or folding over themselves, these folds. So I'm gonna go ahead and start with a higher resolution Dynamesh. I'm gonna start, you know, polishing some of these, you know, shapes that look very that the resolution looks very low. And then once I'm happy with that, I'm just gonna go ahead and start adding some secondary forms. So to start with, this is the current mesh. We could keep doing it with the Sculptris Pro, but I think I want to have a more uniform topology, so more consistent polygons, and then so we can do the reprojection later and add more details later on. So if I Dynamesh right now at 80, well, at a value of 80, this is what I get. So not ideal. We want to keep some more of these details, so I'm going to increase this quite a bit. This might be a little, you know, overkill, but we're gonna try 664 Dynamesh, and there we go. So that sort of kept all those details. So this is pretty high actually. Let's undo that. I'm gonna do it with less, maybe 500. It's still too much. 360. All right, that's more reasonable, and it still kept all the what's the name, the details. So at this point, what I would like to do is combine these pieces together and try to maintain, you know, that nice set of crevices that was created. So there's a couple of things that we can do in order to maintain the you know, the sharpness of these crevices. One would be to increase the Dynamesh resolution quite a bit, and the other one would be to deflate these, Dynamesh them, and then inflate them manually. So what I mean by that would be to maybe just go to the inflate palette, and I will deflate that, something like that. I know it doesn't look great. I would Dynamesh it and then manually inflate those to maintain sort of like these the crevices in between. But that's not necessary in this case. I'm not gonna spend too much time in this. Again, it's very sketchy. I didn't realize I had this bump here. Hopefully, okay. I don't know what I did there. All right. So I'm gonna merge these two together with the merge subpalette. Merge down. I'm gonna click OK. All right. So now this is a single mesh, but it's still it's not merged together. This is just, sorry, it's not a continuous topology. So if I hold Control and Shift, I can individually select all of these pieces and separate them. So what I want to do now is run the Dynamesh, see how what the result of the Dynamesh at this resolution gives me. The resolution we used was something like 360. So Dynamesh this. All right, so you see with this resolution, we sort of like lose a little bit of those crevices, which in this case, it doesn't look too bad. But if you want to keep that very nice and sharp lines, then you will have to do with a high resolution. I think this one might be okay. An alternative that you can use would be to use the remesh by union, and that will only connect the intersection of the polygons. So let me just undo the Dynamesh and show you that. So we could go ahead and go to the Gizmo 3D, and in the cog icon we can click on remesh by union, and hang on, I have symmetry enabled, so it works without symmetry. Remesh by union, wait until ZBrush does its magic, cog icon, accept. All right, so what the remesh by union did was actually merge these two together, and you see the kind of like the outline of these pieces is being connected to the underlying mesh. So that's one way to do it. And now if I go ahead and smooth this, it's all gonna be part of the same, which is pretty useful. So that would be one way to do it, and that way we can keep this nice sort of like sharpness. Of course, if we go ahead and smooth everything, it's gonna be all connected. So a couple of options there. I think I'm just gonna go with the Dynamesh because I want to keep it simple and keep it very sketchy, so that I can add more details and, you know, overlap a few more kind of like flaps of skin. So let's go for something higher, like 480. And if you're still like setting up the main forms and the secondary forms, I would advise just stick with a very low resolution. But in this case, sort of I'm happy with this. Now there's another trick here that I wanted to share in this particular area. So if you hold shift and then start smoothing this out, you might lose some of the actual volume. So there's one particular smooth brush that would be very helpful, which is the smooth valleys. Okay, the smooth valleys would be, I think it's it would load by default. I have it set up in my C startup folder, so not sure. This one here, so smooth valleys. If you cannot find it in the actual brush palette by default, then you can just find it from the lightbox brushes, smooth brushes. Smooth. So it's one of those here, smooth valley. And that basically is going to smooth everything but the volume. So in other words, it's going to smooth these lines in here and try to keep the volume around. Okay, so this is probably one of the ways that you can work around the issue of, not the issue, or the process of dynameshing, like so. Oops, I think I'm gonna also do a quick mirror and weld, because I dynameshed without symmetry, and usually, let me just double check, there is a, yep, cool, enable symmetry, and then we can just do a quick cleanup of this. We can come back and do a little bit more of cleanup. See this part here, we can actually inflate this a bit, because there's kind of like a hole in there, and I don't want to have any of that, or try to avoid it at this point. Let's do another redynamesh it. All right. The other thing is, because we have a rather, you know, large resolution or high resolution, if we try to smooth this around here, even though we have this smooth valleys, it's not going to be very obvious. So you can also use a smooth stronger, and that allows you to very quickly polish this. So that's kind of like what I want to do now. I'm also going to change the intensity so that I have more control over the pressure with the tablet. And I'm just going to do a quick cleanup, like smoothing some of these very visible polygons, and then of course we're going to have to come back and redo some of the details in this case, which is not a to me this is not a big issue. It's not like we actually had like very like perfect details or anything. We just had an indication of where the details will be. So I'm totally fine to just go over all of these, smooth them out, and then we can work on the details a little bit better. So again, I'm just using the smooth stronger, and this brush will override some of the details, but again, they're not really details. They were just kind of like markings so that we can create the volumes. So we're gonna use those markings, or whatever is left from those markings, to continue refine the sketch before we do the projection and the retopology and all that. So we'll get to that. So you see, just by going over the entire model with the smooth stronger, and I'm also varying the pressure or the strength of the brush with the pen, with the Wacom. So, but it just gives you a much cleaner base so that you can keep refining. And try to blend this a little bit more here. Okay, and I think we are good to move to the next stage, which is bringing back those secondary forms, or establishing a little bit more of the secondary forms now that we have this. And of course, we can then, go with the damp standard brush and refine this like so. Just add those crevices, and we can inflate this manually again, but just wanted to give you an idea of what the process would be here, or like my process really. And like anything in ZBrush, there's like 10 different ways of doing the same thing, and some of them might give you a better result. Some of the ways might give you a faster result. It really depends on what you're trying to achieve, really. All right, I'll come back to this later. Just wanted to have it well defined in there, and actually need to smooth this out a little bit more. All right, another brush that you can use at this point before you start adding more details and so on would be the polish brush. Not the H polish, just the polish brush, which is, I think, is BMP. No, BPO. So BPO is the shortcut, and that is not as strong or as evident as the H polish to flatten an area, but it really helps to get rid of the blobbiness in some cases. So that, in combination with the strong, the smooth strong, will give you a very clean surface to continue working with. I mean, this one is not too bad, and actually all of these bumps, they're part of the secondary forms that I'm going to refine anyway, but just wanted to show you an alternative in case you didn't know about this other sculpting brush or polishing brush. All right, cool. So let's do a quick save. Let's have a look and see any question here. Are you doing final render in ZBrush or Keyshot Max Maya? For this Cassowary, I don't know yet. I don't know if we're gonna get to rendering, but we'll see. I don't know. I will let you know depending on how we go, because we've done already 20 minutes of just polishing. So, and I wanted to get to Polypaint. We'll see. Trying out your Portuñol. Eu vou a tratar. Good evening, morning. Cool. Hey, Dougie, how's it going? Hey, Javier, how you going? Cool. All right. So yeah, let's go ahead and define a little bit more of the secondary forms. I'm gonna do that with the clay brush, just the normal clay brush, and this one is a good option in this case to sort of refine these volumes and add a little bit of volume as well. So just gonna have a look at some of the reference here and work a little bit on this area here. And I think just by looking at the reference, we might have to push things a bit. So I'm gonna take my move brush and enable AccuCurve. Just wanted to push things forward a bit, just nudging things. Not, at this point that we have a large or like a high resolution, it's going to be very hard to do large proportional changes. So that's why it's good to have the primary shapes first, all ready to go. I just had a look at some of the reference that I found, and the beak, or the corner of the mouth of the beak is a little bit more towards, more in line with the back of the eye. That's all I'm doing here. And maybe this hole for the ear is a bit close at them as well. There we go. And let's bring, oops. Hang on a second, I think I did something wrong when I reset my custom UI. There we go. Clay brush. So yeah, I'm gonna use this one to add more volumes. And I still have my smooth stronger, so I can come back and smooth the transitions very nicely. So I'm just looking at the reference here to see how this part of the skin sort of falls. It's pretty cool, but also very intricate. So I'm just trying to go for the main shapes, like trying to follow the main wrinkles here. And we probably need to add more volume here as well. And remember, this is just a Dynamesh mesh, like we Dynameshed everything, so we have plenty of resolution, and if we start to see some stretching, we can just re-Dynamesh stuff very easily. All right, just a bit of smoothing. So I like the clay builder brush, no sorry, the clay brush at this stage, just to very subtly refine some of the secondary forms that were almost the primary forms that we have already established in the previous stage. We could also use the clay builder brush just to add more volume a little bit faster. The only thing with that one is that it requires a stronger smoothing, and we can lose some of the details as well. All right, I think that's looking a little bit better. I'm gonna try to fix this part of the the transition of the beak is pretty harsh, and that's one of the things that I really like about this creature, this animal, that it has a lot of different textures and colors, and it's all about, to me at least, it's all about the transition between the forms and the different surfaces, and I found that to be very intricate in this creature. So but this one is pretty prominent or very well defined, so I'm just using the damp standard brush here. And then when it gets to this point, this is when, like closer to the beak or to the eye, that's when it starts to blend really nicely with the other part or the other surface type, not like the bony area. All right, so I'm gonna use this damp standard brush to very quickly define some of this as well. So I think the eye needs a little bit of work. I'm gonna use the move brush just to round up this eyelid, make it a little bit thicker. And this is just the move brush with AccuCurve, so that way we get some pointy areas. All right, so let's bring in the damp standard brush again. And this is probably one of the most wrinkly areas, sort of like, not the area, of course the neck is way more wrinkly, but I mean in terms of the transitions that I was talking about, this part is almost part of the beak already, and the beak of course is more like a solid piece. So this would be the area that has more wrinkles in that sort of surface, and that's why I'm trying to pay special attention in this area. So as you can see, the placement of these lines is still very loose, and is still kind of like marking out the, you know, where I can add more volume. So I'm gonna come back in these areas. I'm gonna go into solo mode as well. I'm gonna come back to these areas with maybe the clay build-up brush or any other brush to refine the volumes, just marking out where I think based on the references as well, where these folds and these wrinkles will be, or at least more prominent. And this is a technique that is not just for wrinkles, right? So I can redefine this area a little bit better. And this is not necessarily a wrinkle, right? It's just an area of the beak that, you know, it's a little bit more, that looks like a wrinkle, but when we refine it with the other brushes, it will be way different. Or that's what I'm hoping. All right, I'm gonna refine the beak a little bit, just to get a sense of how like almost like these two pieces are not, you know, well together. If you wanted to have a, you know, a proper cassowary, like a production character, you probably wanna sculpt these with the mouth slightly open, and then actually create a mouth bag and all that. But this is just a sketch, so not a big deal. All right, so at this point I probably wanna go ahead and redynamesh. Not that we did a lot of, you know, a lot of changes, but actually let's not do that. It's fine as it is. This is something that we can fine tune later on when we do the projection. Just want to bring in my clay builder brush, and this allows me to build volume a little bit faster, and just want to work on the transitions here. Just adding a little bit of volume and smoothing those areas. So this one, this process is not as fun to watch, but it's necessary. Like if you wanna have something that looks half decent, you need to spend some time working on these areas before, you know, going into details. I'm gonna go ahead and refine these areas as well, maybe with the standard brush. So these areas, or this part of the neck, is something that I also need to make sure I get right, because there's some very prominent wrinkles here. So they sort of like start from here, from the back. And also something to keep in mind, and this goes for any type of reference that you're using for your characters, right? In this case, I have images of the cassowary. It's a very specific type of cassowary. So they're like, to my knowledge, I think there are like 3 types of like main like subspecies of the cassowary, and they have very distinctive trademarks, or like very distinctive features. Like, you know, the wattle, I think that's how it's called. The wattle, this thing is either non-existent, it is split in 2, like the one that I'm doing right now, or it's just one. The split in 2 is the species and in the like northern territory of Australia. And yeah, so there's different ones, but my point is that because I have my reference, I need to sort of make sure that I get the reference of the right one, although they look very similar, so that if I'm trying to replicate something, you know, very like as accurate as I can. And this is just the standard brush that I'm using. The other thing is that I'm using a series of reference where the cassowary has the neck sort of extended, sort of like looking out for danger or whatever. And there's some other ones where the neck is a little bit more contracted, or sort of is like, yeah, more relaxed. And when that happens, that's when you can see all the folds. So this is kind of like an in-between, and I need to figure out almost like guesswork how much of these wrinkly areas are going to be visible. So that's why I'm going for the almost like the main shapes, or the main big folds before anything else. And the other thing is, with the damp standard brush, I can start refining some of these, because this is the thing, they're not like straight lines, they sort of like interlock with each other. So that's what I'm trying to do here with the damp standard brush. And little by little we get to the bottom ones and try to integrate those as well. For the most part, once the transition here from all these very wrinkly area to this sort of side of the neck is not as wrinkly in terms of like big volumes. So I'm gonna leave this one for later. And to be honest, this is a step of the process where I can spend most of my time. It's like very therapeutic for me. It's very chill. I can just put some music in the background, or a podcast or something like that, and then just spend time working on these forms. I'm gonna try to establish some of the main folds in here. Okay, so there's also obviously some wrinkles here, but at the back, but they're a little bit tiny, so there's less fat, I guess, or less the skin is less loose at this point, so the wrinkles become a little bit smaller. And this is an example of why I find these type of creatures really interesting, because the transition is very subtle. Like if you really study it and really pay attention to it, it's just amazing. Like how these big folds sort of like very subtly go into these small wrinkles, and that's I think it's just a great way to study, not just for creating or replicating, in this case a cassowary, but to add it to your skill set of creating other characters later on, because what you're practicing, or at least in my view, would be that idea of how one piece flows into the next one, so you can create something that looks more realistic or more believable, and it's just about those subtleties, like the transition of shapes, how one volume flows into the next one, and that sort of thing. And it's very valuable in terms of the in the long run when you actually have to create a character for a production environment, or a character for a client. The client might not even be very artistic, or might not notice all these subtleties, but the fact that you're putting in there and that you're putting the work in those areas is what probably is gonna make it or break it, really. So you don't need to be an artist to recognize these type of things. Sometimes you don't even notice, or other artists might not even notice all the kind of like the thought process behind it, behind what you're doing. But if it is not there, it will be visible. So what I'm trying to say is, sometimes if it works, like it's almost like if you don't notice it, it's like if you don't notice something that's wrong in a way, it's working. And if you actually notice, that's because it's not working. I don't know if that makes sense. It's kind of like that saying of a joke is not funny if you have to explain it, in a way. So you don't have to explain, oh yeah, I'm putting this transition here because all this and blah 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 blah. It's more about just putting it there and making sure that it works. And if you don't get any feedback on that, it means that it's probably working fine. I'm just talking nonsense while I'm doing this. I know this is not the most interesting process to watch, but you know, we can talk about anything while I finish this or continue adding this. Here towards the bottom is kind of interesting because it starts to, like, the gravity starts to play a big factor, or like a big role into the next set of wrinkles. So all this is sort of like pulling down a little bit, and it's obviously mixing with the rest of the shape of the cassowary. So I'm just doing a quick markup of how these wrinkles might look. So now we're starting to get closer to something that looks mildly interesting in terms of the details. But as you can see, I haven't spent too much time doing the details or anything. It's just marking up those secondary forms, right? And we probably have to also do a bit of work in here. This is another very interesting area. I'm gonna do a quick save, check the questions, and we'll get to these ones in just a bit. Cool. Man, you made such an impact in my process, Carlos. Thanks so much, man. I'm really glad to hear that. That's what I do really. So thanks so much for mentioning it. How long will the creature insert mesh pack be on sale? Just until the end of the month of January. So you have about 10 days. It's only $20. By the way, some people have been buying it for more than $20. So just adding a little extra, and I really appreciate that. And I'm sure the farmers in Australia will do that as well when we send the money. The reason is only for a limited time, like I mentioned, is the fact that we kind of like need to send the money as soon as possible. And after that, it's not like I'm gonna sell it, because other artists participated, so I'm not gonna take money from that. So I'm just gonna leave it there for the amount of time, and it's a limited campaign. Anyone knows how about design shape language? So that's kind of like what we're working on, and very loosely talking about while we sculpt. Francisco, where are you from? Your name has to be Spanish or Latin America. Yes, so I was born in Colombia, and I lived in Colombia for about 14 years. So when I was in my teens, I moved to Costa Rica in Central America, and in Costa Rica I spent, I did my high school. I studied my bachelor degree in animation as well, and then I moved to Australia when I was like 22, 23, and I did so I came here to study and to keep studying animation, because that's my kind of like my trade, what I studied. And then I fell in love with Melbourne. Basically, it's a pretty cool city. So I just stayed, and I now I'm Australian, so I have a Australian citizenship, and that's a summary of my journey. I'm just gonna bring in the clay brush here, because these areas here, they're a little bit flatter, and this is part of the refining process of those shapes. And in fact, this tends to be a little bit, with a large brush and the move brush, tends to be a little bit fatter here, and it goes in a bit here. Alright, so with that, let's go back to the damp standard brush to keep defining some of these areas. I'm gonna try to leave the center a little bit untouched, and this is just a very quick and easy tip for you guys. If you're working with symmetry, which is currently what I'm doing, obviously, working with symmetry can, it can be very beneficial, and it allows you to work really, really fast on your projects. But sometimes it just feels, a little bit, how to say it, like dead in a way. So this is a quick trick that I do. I just work in symmetry up to sort of like certain areas and leave or like certain point, and the middle line, I just leave that untouched, so that then I can just, without symmetry, fill that area in. So this is roughly what this area looks like. The wrinkles here start to become a little bit heavier and bigger, and it's sort of like it stops being a wrinkle, and it's more of like a lump, or like a, I don't know, a baggy area. And again, the center, we'll work on the center line later on. Just wanna define this a little bit. And all I'm trying to do here really is mark some of the main, the bigger indentations that I can see based on the references that I have. I'm gonna go ahead and hide this part a little bit. So with the selection tool, the lasso tool, just hide that a little bit. Maybe from this angle it's gonna be easier. All right, so that I can do something like that. All right, so let's say that maybe let's do a little bit of work here very quickly. There's some areas that's important to also refine around the eye, but I think that's the main secondary shapes are there, so we should be good to go. I mean, try to move to the next stage. We've done about 45 minutes. Cool. So I'm gonna try to move a little bit faster and work on the areas in here. So this is going to be more of like smaller details once we do the retopology. But again, because of what I just said, because of the retopology, it's important to get some pieces right, just so that ZBrush can figure out certain volumes, or describe certain volumes with these lines that I'm painting, or sculpting rather than paint. And just by adding these lines as well, I think you can sort of starting to feel the difference in the surfaces. So this is kind of like wear and tear in a way. But obviously this is not as wrinkly, and there's some sections that are kind of like cut off. So if I press the Alt key with the clay builder brush, it sort of like pushes that edge out, and that's kind of like what I'm trying to do here. And we can bring in the clay brush as well and just fill in, for example, the top part of this edge. So it sort of creates, let me just bring in. So I'm trying to just generate something like a cascading effect or an overlapping effect, like so, in this part of the of the crest. So what I'm doing is adding a little bit of the, marking up this with damp standard brush. But the damp standard brush, if you look at it from the side view, it's just doing this, right? So it's creating an area like this. So if you look at the side view, this is the result of the damp standard brush pressing the Alt key, right? So what you can do afterwards is use the clay builder brush and then add volume just on the top of this sort of like line. So basically what I'm doing here, for example, and that's just gonna create this subtle effect. And then you can also go in with the damp standard brush again, the normal effect, push that in, so it just gives you that. So overall, if I use a different color, you get something like that, just with these 3 steps. So marking up with the Alt key, then build a brush or clay brush, and then refine again. So that's what I'm doing now to get that effect. Just going on top of the lines that I set up. So it's more probably, it's going to be evident here in this area. So this is what I meant about the damp standard brush. So this is actually exactly what I just mentioned. So I'm going to go over here just in the top area with the clay brush. Right, so you see now it's sort of like filling in that area of that part, and then go back with the damp standard brush, the normal effect, and then just push things in just to sharpen that transition. And there you go. That's the sort of like stepping effect that I was looking after. But keep it simple using the brushes that you're familiar with. Like I said, in ZBrush there's plenty of ways of doing the same thing. Alright, so I'm gonna try to do some of the main areas of the main indentations for this crest. So this one here. But like I said, most of the, for the most part, this crest is very, very smooth, as in the primary shape is very smooth. What you get is just some scratches, obviously, but those are part of the details. This is more like the secondary forms, like this area right here. The rest is just details that we can do later on, once we actually have the clean base mesh. Let's go ahead and now clean up the beak, because right now it's a little bit rubbish. So I'm gonna select my clay builder brush and just refine some of these volumes very quickly. All right. And now that I have this brush, I can also, we haven't finished refining this really, but let's just go over this area a little bit. It's just this specific part. I'm gonna just hide only this, working on only this area. This needs a little bit of work. We should have actually done this before increasing the Dynamesh resolution, but it's fine. It can totally be done. It's just easier if you have less resolution to just refine the primary shapes, like I've been saying. I'm gonna take my move brush and refine the shape of this beak. At this point, again, because we have a lot of resolution, all I'm doing is just little notches to refine some of the volumes, but we're not making any large proportional changes at this point. With the damp standard brush, we can also work on some lines in here, some wrinkles that sort of pull the, these wrinkles here are more than wrinkles, are the transition and the connection of those of the skin with the beak, I believe. So they kind of they're like penis, or yeah, I like to think about it as when I'm doing this type of thing, I always think about some type of analogy so that it just helps me remind, it helps me remember things later on and actually put them into practice when I do, personal work or creature work, just made up work. So I think about these areas, for example, like pins. So there's a pin in here, there's a pin in here, and that sort of thing. And the stretching of the skin is happening because those pins are being pulled, or the cassowary is pulling it forward. I don't know if it makes sense what I'm just saying, but the beak is sort of like pulling these areas out, and that's what creates this sort of tension as well. So it's very interesting because you have very loose skin in some areas and some very tense points in here, which creates a very cool and nice contrast in the visual. So I'm gonna go with the standard brush to add volume here very quick to some of these lines. And I can see some activity there in the chat. Just give me 1 second and I'll go ahead and check that out. All right, and also just breaking these lines a little bit because there will be more, there's still going to be quite a bit of skin here. So, and remember, this is part of the middle line, so I'm not gonna mess with that too much. Cool. All right, so there's some areas that I would like to refine or keep refining in terms of the secondary forms, and those would be these areas of the neck, just because they tend to be kind of like very uneven, like very blobby. Right now this has a very almost like a straight line on each side, so I'm going to use the standard brush and then just put some pressure on certain points or just going over certain areas just to kind of like inflate it, inflating some of these areas but without the inflate brush, so without pushing the polygons along the normals, just simply adding volumes in the standard way, and that's gonna probably help break apart this part of the silhouette, at least from the front view. You'll see. Something else that you can do, I mean, I don't think is necessary, but you can increase or you can add or enable the gravity. So in the brush palette you have gravity, so I think I removed it from my custom UI, but if you go to the where is it, curve or depth, so if you go to the depth sub palette in the brush palette, you have this gravity slider, and if you push this forward, then you're gonna get more of a gravity effect. So let's say that you have, and you probably know this already, but let's say that you have a plane there. Actually, let's move it. Let's say that you have a plane like this, or a flat surface, and then you use the damp standard brush, and then you create this sort of like blobby, volume, so push it forward. So that is kind of like the standard way that, in the way that this is the standard way that the standard brush works, but it just pushes the polygons outwards like this. But then you have this gravity slider, so if you push this one to, well, I don't know, if you put it to 100%, it will do both. So it will push things out, but it's also gonna act as a gravity, and the direction of the gravity is given by this little pen pointing down. So then you end up with something that is like that, right? Sort of like falling down. So it's really helpful for these type of things. In fact, let me just do it for the sake of demonstration. I'm gonna add some gravity to the standard brush. So now when I push this out, you'll see sort of like falls over itself. So it's pretty useful. Let's just leave it as it is for now with that bit of gravity, and that really helps to create that overlapping effect or overhanging effect. And it's just a simple slider. That's it. The gravity slider is actually something that I use quite often, even with subtle numbers not too strong when I'm creating the custom brushes. So if you ever got some of the brushes pack that I have online, you might open up the brush modifier or the brush palette and check how they're what modifiers are actually modified, and then you see there's quite a bit of this overlapping effect just because of the gravity. And this is also, for example, if I just remember, if you have also got the so I have a course that is the clothes and drapery course, and that one comes with some resources to work with clothes and drapery. So that one, most of the brushes, of course, they have this effect, the gravity effect, to create folds and drapery. So it is something that works really nice for this type of things, like skin folds and clothes, that sort of thing. But yeah, so there you go. you can try this yourself. It's very simple. It's just about finding the right balance of how much of this slider, how much strength, and the direction of it. All right, so I think I'm gonna go with the clay builder brush. I'm gonna do a quick save, check the chat. Let's see how we're doing. Ooh, hang on. Quite a bit of activity. What's your favorite project from 2019? Ooh, that's a hard one. I don't know. I think my favorite project in 2019, more than anything, is the creature, the alien that I did for the course that I have online, the Extra Mile course. Just because I put a lot of time and effort into building it, and figuring out the systematic approach for the course. So it's been really rewarding. Like the students have been creating some amazing work. And that to me in itself is the best project, rather than like what's the most popular one, I guess, or like the one that has more likes. For me, it's the one that I found to be most rewarding, I guess, and most interesting to work with, and that has the more longevity, because it's the face of the course. So that one is that alien. And also I did an update recently to the course, which is a full module about hard surface modeling, and I used another character, the alien with the banana face, like the yellow face. So those two, I think they're just my favorite because they're part of a bigger project, which is my course that I released last year, and it's been fantastic. Very, very, very cool. So that's a good question, actually. So how do you know how wrinkles and folds behave? That's I think that comes with practice and obviously studying things. But looking at references, you can start to figure out things bit by bit. It's just a matter of figuring out what secondary shapes, or like the process of setting the big volumes, the primary shapes, then concentrating on the secondary shapes, and then the wrinkles. But everything is driven by the tension points, pressure points, or gravity. So those are like three main things. So if you have a shirt on, the tension points would be your shoulders, for example. And if you don't have anything else, like a belt or anything, then the rest is drapery and is gravity. So if you sort of like keep those three things in mind, tension points, pressure points, and gravity, you could figure out most of the things. And of course, I use references. I love how everything on YouTube side is asking legitimate questions, and everyone on Twitch is just memeing. That's fair enough. Okay, so creature pack bot, awesome. Thanks so much, Francisco. Cool. All right. So let's continue working on this. So I selected the clay builder brush just because I want to add more volume around these areas, and the clay builder brush allows me to sort of override certain lines. So for instance, if this area right here has all these lines that I set up, with the clay builder brush I can go ahead and override this, for example, and just add volume and override that, and that helps me to mix a little bit that idea of the main sort of like memory faults and wrinkles, as well as, you know, this designing a little bit what I think you know, would work, and sell the effect of all the overlapping skin folds and all that. And also try to achieve that blobby effect. As in, it's more of a rounded set of fat deposits, of fat bits. And I'm not sure what's inside, what type of glands there is in this wattle, but I would assume this is just fat hanging, but I don't know. I don't know what's the evolutionary intent, or why is it still there. I don't know what it does for these creatures, but it's a very distinctive feature. Alright, so I'm thinking I'm getting closer here. Let's just go ahead and work on the transitions in these areas. And of course, because these ones are pretty prominent, we need to add more volume. At least at the part where they intersect. So I know I keep going on about it, but I think this is probably the most important thing, that like if you are actually following along this process and you were wondering what's the point of all this, I would say that the takeaway from this project, it would be just working on the transition of shapes. That's crucial. And, you know, not moving forward until you are satisfied with how one volume blends into the other one, or how one volume flows or is affected by the next one. So and that's why I spend a lot of time in this part of the process. All right, so what else we can talk about? Like I said, this could be probably pretty boring to watch. So if you guys have any questions, put them in the chat. It doesn't have to be related to this. You know, we're just talking, nothing specifically. Of course, if you have questions about the process and things about that you want to know about my workflow or this specific project, whatever you want, I'm here to, you know, shed a light on what I personally do, which might be different from other people or other artists that you can also watch here in the Pixologic channel. So might be good to have the point of view, good to have different point of views, so you can figure out your own workflow as well. All right, I think this part is the worst one of the entire character, or the entire model, because again, the middle line. So I might just go out of symmetry and very quickly cut up some areas and try to mix them up. Not mix them up, just again working on the transitions. Just keeping in mind that this is kind of like a, you know, the folds here will be pretty big. And I don't have a very good or high resolution reference for this part, so I'm just, you know, making it up as I go. obviously based on the other parts that we already created. So I just want to break apart this symmetry a little bit because it's too symmetrical and it's bothering me. Not that you will see it, but I don't know. It's, even though sometimes you won't see certain parts of a model or a project, it's a good practice to just actually work on them so that you don't get rusty in that area that is not visible. So that's just a productivity tip, and it's productivity just because it will help you in the long run to get better at certain things, I think. All right, so that looks slightly better. Still blobby, but good enough. All right, I'm gonna go with the standard brush, and I think we still have the gravity, so I'm gonna remove the gravity and I'm gonna add some wrinkles here. Or not wrinkles, like we already established what the wrinkles will be. This is just adding volume to the main ones. Hey Bjorn. Do you in general sculpt wrinkles, or do you also use alphas? I use a ton of alphas and custom brushes, but mostly for detailing. So this, at this point, to me, this is not detailing. Like, I can still change things quite a bit. I would say I would consider this to be secondary forms. The details will come when you actually do the pores and all that. And for that, definitely alphas is one of the best things in ZBrush. Alphas and custom brushes based on alphas and that sort of thing. And I have a few that I can show. So it's 10 plus 10. Okay. I have a feeling that we might not be able to get to Polypaint as I expected. So we'll probably just finish this one up to a point that is, you know, the retopology, the quick retopology, quick ZRemesher projection, and maybe start with the details. And we might have to take this one further to the next session, the next stream, and work on the Polypaint there. Just because, yeah, I don't want to rush it. I kind of like the what this one is going, so I don't want to rush it. And that's kind of like my New Year's resolution. Sometimes I get to the end of the projects and I just start rushing things just because I want it finished, and also finish up projects. I'm currently working on like 3 or 4 personal projects at the same time as, you know, client work, which, you know, it's I wouldn't advise to do that if you're kind of like starting up, but then once you get more comfortable with your own workflow and the speed at which you can work and deliver, working in multiple projects is actually really cool, really cool way to maintain you know, the interest in all of them at the same time, because you could be working on a mecha character, you know, like a robot type of thing, and then also start working on, for example, this Cassowary, that sort of thing, and then one day you might feel like, you know, I want to try this technique of hard surface modeling that I just learned, or I want to work on that style rather than wrinkles, and then you just go and do that, and it's pretty rewarding. And then the next day you might feel like, you know what, today I want to do wrinkles and that sort of thing. So you can just jump between different projects very easily. And oops, I think I've been working without symmetry. Anyway, there's a way to recover all that anyway, but it won't be symmetrical. Anyway, It's not a big deal. Okay, let's go ahead and do some work here in this wattle area. Again, with the clay builder brush, it's probably best, just because this is very lumpy, the surface of this wattle. So just the clay builder brush will create this effect. That, of course, we can refine later. Do I have? Yes. Thanks for reminding me. I have like actually reminders in my phone to remind me to have some water, because you know it's very important to keep yourself hydrated. And I just get into the zone, sculpt for ages or work on whatever I'm doing and forget to drink water. So yeah, thanks for the reminder. I'll grab a glass of water in just a second. Actually, I have my bottle, so I'm just gonna bring that. Are you going to take this to compositor? Yeah, we might do. It will be another way to finish up this project. We could do that, and I can show you some cool and nice techniques to paint that in Substance Painter. Of course, that wouldn't be a ZBrush live stream because it's not necessarily about ZBrush, but then yeah, or we can do something on the ZBrush guides. By the way, there is a new ZBrush guide coming today. I'm just wrapping it up. It's another video tutorial about the ZBrush compositor, but more about the practical, like a practical approach. Because so far everything that I've been showing with the ZBrush compositor plugin and the process that I've been showing is mostly for rendering and finishing your image in there. In fact, the latest tutorial is about that, how to relight and work on the final look of your character or whatever, doesn't have to be a character, inside Substance Painter with the compositor. But the one that I'm about to release today, probably I'll get working on that after the stream, is about more of a practical approach. So when I say practical, I mean in terms of producing assets using the compositor, using ZBrush and the compositor for Substance Painter or Marmoset Toolbag 3 to produce something that you can actually use later on in a different software, like the resources or textures and that sort of thing. So it's a pretty interesting little tutorial. It's relatively short, and I walk you through the process of creating custom brushes for hair, like stylized hair, and then how to combine the compositor and Substance Painter to produce the assets or the textures of that stylized hair. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, keep an eye on the ZBrush guide, and if you're part of my email list, I will also include a link there. I have a pretty cool tip for today, so I will send that, and also I will send the link to the new ZBrush guide. All right, so I think I'm just getting lost in the tweaking and the refining of these shapes. So what I'm going to do now, actually in this middle line, I'm just going to add some blobby volumes very quickly so that it's not as flat. Just adding some variation here in the surface. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and do a quick save. It seems like the Uncle Fester is looking at us. Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and do the reprojection. So I'm going to do a quick zero measure, then do the projection, show you a couple of techniques, and then maybe we can start adding some, more like smaller wrinkles and other details now that we have the main folds in place and that sort of thing. We might actually, I feel like there's some areas that we can actually exaggerate. So let me just do that first. Clip. The standard brush, sorry. It's just that these areas, they feel that they have they break the silhouette a little bit more. It's not as straight line. So I'm just pushing them with the standard brush, and then we can go with the inflate and just add a bit more volume, so that to tighten those wrinkles a little bit more. Even with the clay builder brush. And these areas will look a little bit better once we add the actual details. All right, so I'm just very quickly, before we do what I said I was going to do, I'm just refining some of the, like highlighting some of the main cuts with the damp standard brush. So not only like what I'm doing this, not only I'm trying to think about the way that one fold or wrinkle falls into the next one, but also try to maintain the flow, the overall flow of details. So it's kind of like the basic shape of this is, to me, something like that, like an S with a little hook. That would be the crest. But then you have this idea of, you know, the lines sort of following a certain rhythm from this point. So it's kind of like what I'm trying to do with these lines. So just keeping an eye on the flow as well, so that it makes sense, and you know, that's the idea. All right, I'm gonna take a quick break, just going for some water, and come back, and let's do the all right, here we are, back again here. Okay, so see, cool. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and do a zero measure for this guy and a projection, so we can start adding details in a cleaner topology, because this is still a Dynamesh. So I'm going to duplicate my mesh just in case, and I'm gonna probably put it here in the original folder. Now there are two ways that I mean, there's like I said, in ZBrush there's many ways to do it, but there's two ways that I would usually approach a quick retopology. So if I'm not doing something that has to have a perfect topology, or I just want to do a sketch and work on the details, I would approach the retopology and the projection in two different ways depending on the project. So and depending also in the type of shapes that the project has. So the first one would, and the simplest one would be just duplicate this, do a series mesh, do a project, and so on, and that's probably what I'm going to do. But I also have in my custom UI this button here called the Dynamesh Dyna to Sub-D. So, oops, hang on, just want to make sure that you guys can see it. Yep, so this one right here. Oops. So Dynamesh to subdivision. So this is a custom macro, something that I did here from the macro menu, and then I created a button and put it in my UI. So this button is going to take anything that you have in as a Dynamesh and is going to produce a better topology version already with the details in one single click. So I'm going to show you what this button does because it's pretty cool, and then I'm going to show you how to do it as well because it's pretty easy. I mean, what's the process involved, what's the behind the scenes of this button that I'm going to use, and then I'm going to use the other approach. You know, but I just want to give you different options. For that, maybe let's do it in another mesh. So let's Dynamesh this. Oops, that's too much. All right, and I'm gonna do a couple of things here just so that you can see the effect. So kind of like the wrinkles that we've been working on. I'm gonna do a recreation of that very quickly. A wrinkle ball. And then I'm going to use the clay buildup. Sorry, let's do the clay brush. And a little bit more of the damp standard. I mean, this is nothing. I just want to have some enough resolution and details in this Dynamesh sphere so you can see the practical example of what I'm about to do. Right, so if I get closer, actually let's go ahead and redynamesh this. We can even do, let's just redynamesh. So this is a sphere with some details, and this is still a Dynamesh object, right? I'm going to change to this material so you guys can see a little bit better. So this is a Dynamesh object, and then if I want to work on these, you know, add more details and all that, I will probably switch at certain point of the workflow to a cleaner topology, projecting all the details and work with the subdivision approach. That's why the name of this button is Dyna to Sub-D. So going from Dynamesh sketch to a subdivision approach with which, you know, gives me more control about certain things. So the way that this works is actually pretty simple. Once I finish with the sketch, I just go ahead and click Dyna to Sub-D. It's gonna take a little while, and right now ZBrush is just going through that macro, which recorded a series of actions and buttons that I press to get to this point. But the reason I do it in a macro is because if I'm just working on something quick and I want to do a retopology and all that, I click on this button, and then it gives me something to keep working on still on a sketch, but with a much cleaner topology. There you go. So now clear the mask, and now this is retopology, and I have two subdivisions level, or two levels of subdivision, right? So much cleaner topology. This is a series meshed sphere, and I have the subdivision approach. So now I can keep dividing these and concentrate on the details, and now I can start working on the the details using some of the brushes that I have. So for example, for the person that that asked before, forgot who it was, I can go to my brushes, go to the skin pack, and let's see what would be a good one to show you, or for this specific purpose. I think the lip detailer would be good. So this is a custom brush with custom settings and custom alphas, but now that I have a cleaner topology, I can start adding more of these wrinkles, right? Which is probably what I want to do with the Cassowary. But I would only get to this point using alphas and detailing with brushes like this after I have a cleaner topology, right? Not all the time. I can actually have a pretty high resolution Dynamesh and also use a Sculptris Pro to do something like this. But in this case, I want to show you this process that I usually don't get to do in the streams. I always end up with a very sketchy character object. But there you have it. So this is just a custom brush that allows me to do those details, but I already have a clean topology that I can go back in subdivision, and this is my low resolution mesh. All right, so really what is happening here behind the scenes is it's actually really simple. So I'm gonna go back in time until I get to, here it is, my Dynamesh object, Dynamesh it just in case. There we go. So the way that this works, the macro that I have, the Dynamesh to subdivision, it works this way. So you can go ahead and go to the geometry palette, right? You can subdivide this Dynamesh as it is, right? A couple of times depending on depending what the resolution you have. If you do it a couple of times, when you reproject, it's going to reproject those 3 levels of subdivision. So you can do another time. So I have 2 million right now. This might take a little while, but it's all right. Then you can go ahead and freeze the subdivision levels. So you can click freeze subdivision levels, and now ZBrush basically froze those levels, the 3rd level of subdivision. And now we can just go ahead and do a quick ZRemesher. So I'm going to click, let's go to the ZRemesher palette here. And I'm going to click half, and I'm going to click ZRemesher, right? So now ZBrush is going to give me a retopology, or it's going to remesh this Dynamesh at this subdivision level, right? Doesn't matter. It's like the normal process that we were going to use in the other example anyway. So just doing a quick remesher on a object that has the subdivision level frozen. So let's just wait for that. It's probably gonna, take a little longer just because the amount of polygons I have. Hopefully it's not gonna crash. All right. So now we have retopology. So this is the ZRemesher. We can in fact keep reducing the topology. So we can leave, maybe let's remove adapt, just so that the adaptive density is not on and it's going to be a bit faster, just for demonstration purposes. So I'm going to click half, click ZRemesher again. So you can keep reducing the amount of polygons and retopologizing as many times as you want. Doesn't matter. In the current macro that I have, I only have one ZRemesher. Like, I'm not interested in having a super low res mesh, then projecting and doing like a game asset or anything. I just want to have a cleaner topology. Doesn't matter how many polygons. So I only have one ZRemesh action. All right. So let's say you're happy with this. All we have to do now is freeze the unfreeze the subdivision level. So I'm going to click freeze subdivision levels to switch that off, and ZBrush is basically going to project those details that were in the 3rd subdivision level and everything that we have in that subdivision level. So if I clear the mask, now we have all the details that we had in the 3rd subdivision level, and we also have the subdivisions back on. So if I go back to 1, now this is the low resolution mesh, but we can go higher or lower. So in the low subdivision mesh we have 26,000, in the 3rd one we have 425,000. So all of these that I just showed you, it's all compacted into a single button in my UI called the Dynamesh to subdivision button. And you can do the same thing by start recording a macro, do all the process, stop the macro, and save it in your custom UI. If you're interested in knowing more about these simple macros, I can probably do something in the ZBrush Guides website to show you, but that's about it, right? So now we have a cleaner topology to work with and add details. Now the other process is more manual, but it still give you the same results, and that's probably the one that I want to use in this creature. So I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to have to, so one is going to be the sketch, and the second one is going to be the retopo. Let's call it retopo. Okay, so I'm going to go into solo mode, and with symmetry enable, I'm going to go ahead and open up my ZRemesher here so you guys can see. I have most of my the ones that I use often here in my UI, but you won't be able to see it in the recording anyway. So here on the right hand side I have the ZRemesher open. I'm going to leave adaptive on because there's a lot of areas that need probably more what's the name, resolution or more polygons than others, and that's what this adapt means. It means that the density of the remesher is going to adapt depending on this surface. So with this on, essentially what's happening is that, for example, this area there's going to be more polygons using the adapt, and in this area there's going to be less, right? Because ZBrush needs less polygons to describe this simpler shape than all of these intricate details. So it's good to have the adapt on in this case, but it's going to take longer. If you leave this one off, then it's going to be the same like everywhere, or roughly the same. So in this case I want to have adaptive on. I also want to have half because it's pretty high at this point. And that's it. Let's go ahead and click ZRemesher, and if you have any questions, maybe now it's a good time because it's going to take a little while to produce the new mesh. All right. Hopefully it's not going to take too long. Again, we're not doing a super low res mesh anyway. We just want to have something cleaner so that we can subdivide. All right, so that gives us 200,000, like almost 300,000 polygons, and definitely a much cleaner topology that we can work with. So I just want to check really quickly that there is a nice continuity, nice flow. For the most part, there is. The little stars are right in the areas that I would expect anyway. When I'm referring to the stars to the points that have more than 4 edges like this. So yeah, so you have one here. Maybe this area could do with some work. Another one here. Generally speaking, this is what I look for when I do a retopology, a quick ZRemesh, to see where the flow sort of like breaking. But I think it looks all right. I mean, again, it's not gonna be a perfect topology. Maybe this area could do with some work as well, but there's not gonna be a lot of details in here. Some stretching of the polygons. Here as well, there's something going on, but we can just smooth that out and fix it very quickly. So I think it's a really good automated topology, to be honest. In this case, did a pretty good job. So yeah, I'm happy with this. We can go ahead and move forward. And again, this is just a ZRemesher with half an adaptive on. If you guys want, like if you're following along or if you want to do your own thing, you could actually go lower and being able to manipulate lower shapes. or lower shapes, lower resolution, so change the bigger shapes a little bit. But we have a pretty decent silhouette in a way, so we don't need to do that as much. Let's go ahead and just do one more just for the sake of it. Why not? It's so easy that we just need to wait a little bit longer. That's it. So the same adaptive, have zero measure, and that's going to give us something else. Probably less issues maybe, or sort of like override certain details, but that's good. I'm expecting 150,000 polygons roughly. Yep, 148,000. So let's do a quick check. So there's some stretching here of polygons that we can use this smooth brush to refine. For the most part, it looks pretty decent to me. Again, keep in mind that this is an automated topology, and in this case, it's trying to follow all these wrinkles. If you were doing an asset for a game, for instance, you probably don't want to have all of these wrinkles, accounted for in the low resolution. You will just have a cleaner topology, as in, well, this is clean, but a simpler topology, like a tubular shape, like that. If this was like a really low res, and then use normals and displacement to produce all of these details. So the fact that I'm using the adaptive to actually recreate all of these wrinkles just tells it's not necessarily going to be a game asset. So I'm happy with this. I think it's looking all right. So we have 150,000. What I'm going to do now is get out of solo mode, and then I'm going to turn on the eyes. So now I have the sketch and the retopology sort of like intersecting with each other, like overlapping, and that's the idea for the projection. And I turn off the eyes because the projection in ZBrush is going to project anything that is visible in the canvas, whatever subtool you have. So now I have this project for you guys. You won't be able to see it there. So in the subtool palette or sub palette, we have the project tab here. So I'm gonna go ahead and project all, but I don't need to have color, just geometry, so turn that off, and I'm gonna click project all at this point. So ZBrush is gonna project the details of that sketch into the new mesh. So it just did that, and now we can go ahead and divide the mesh once. So now we have 600,000. Let's go ahead and click project all again, and this is why it's a more manual process, because you subdivide, project, subdivide, project, subdivide, project, so that it sort of like try to the idea with this process is so that the sketch has all the details, but the base mesh you gradually increase the resolution so that you can capture as much of the volumes. So that's done. Let's go ahead and divide it one more time. Now we have 2 million polygons. Let's do one more projecting. This one will take a little bit longer. Let's have a look at the chat. Cool. Is this the low mesh you will use to do the bake? I'm not gonna do a baking in this one. You could use it. You could keep reducing the amount of polygons, like I've been doing, just using the zero measure, and keep reducing it until you're happy with the resolution, and then do the projection that I just did, bit by bit, subdividing it as many times as you need to project the details, and then you can use the low resolution mesh to bake it. But in this case, I'm not going to bake anything. I just want to have a cleaner topology to add the details. But this is going to be just a sculpture with Polypaint for a concept. I'm not going to put this into a game engine or anything like that. All right, so now we have 3 subdivision levels. I think that's pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the sketch. Actually, let's go into solo mode, and I can just click on one and then the next one. So I'm clicking sketch, retopo, sketch, retopo, just checking that it's pretty much the same thing. So it did an excellent job. So now I can just turn off the sketch, bring back my eyes, get out of solo mode, select retopo. I'm gonna put the sketch over there. Let's put it inside the original. So now we have only 2 subtools, and the retopology did a pretty good job. Now at this point, you could just spend some time you know, smoothing certain areas that might need work. And this is also symmetrical, so it's pretty good. And yeah, just spend some time cleaning up some of the projection issues. So for example, in this area, because of the resolution that we had prior to the new mesh, we have this basically ZBrush projected those polygons as well. But because we now have a cleaner topology, we can very quickly refine this and just make it look nicer. All right. So in terms of the details, we can go ahead. Let me see how much time we have. We have 15 minutes, so we probably won't have enough time to show you what I wanted to show you with the extractor brushes. You know what? I'm gonna go with the move brush. I'm gonna show you another cool tip. Just to get something, I'm gonna go to the lowest subdivision level. Ooh, that was close. I'm gonna do a quick save. Just want to show you something else, and we're gonna polypaint the eye just to get the pupil and the iris and everything sort of like ready, so that we can continue working in the next stream. Okay. All right, so I think what I'm going to do, maybe if I have time before the next stream, is to work on these asymmetrical patterns here, which is following the same principles and the same process that I showed you around the sides and the back, just to break up the symmetry here at the front. Probably do a little bit more at the back as well, but I'll do that offline, just so that you don't have to sit down here and watch me do that, because again, it's part of that repetitive process. Anyway, so what I do, like I said, is just I'm gonna do the eyes. So a little bit of polypainting here. I'm gonna select the eyes, go into solo mode, and right now I think I'm just going to either split or delete one of the eyeballs. So I'm gonna hold Control and Shift, Alt and hide one, the right one, or the left eye for the Cassowary, and I'm gonna go ahead and delete that. Delete hidden. Right? It doesn't matter if we delete it, because we can just mirror and weld it afterwards. And this is just a simple sphere. Yep. And I prefer to use it this way, just then, like some people, it really depends, but some artists use the sphere like this, and then have the pupil in here. I rather not doing it, especially for these sketches, just because the point here, the connection here, let me just show you. Right here in the corner, when you subdivide it, it's going to create these artifacts that it will mess with the lighting and the reflection. So having it like this is probably a better idea in this specific example. All right, so I'm gonna switch to skin shade, and I'm going to divide this a few times, maybe a bit more. 500,000 polygons, that's fine. So we have subdivisions now. I'm gonna bring in my standard brush, and I'm going to turn off lazy mouse and add and enable RGB. So now we can actually paint. So this is just a painting brush now. And I want to use radial symmetry so that I can paint faster and more accurately. So if I go ahead and enable symmetry radial in the y-axis, sorry, the z-axis in this case, you'll see it's like off the center. So that's the reason why I deleted the other eye. So I can just take this one, this sphere, and I'm gonna click on this center pivot, set pivot. So that's basically gonna take the center of the world, or the pivot of the center of the world, and put it into this current subtool. And now you'll see I have this, I can paint with a radial symmetry. And if you don't know what this is, that is in the transform palette. So you have set pivot and this other one that is the clear pivot point that I have in my UI as well. All right, so after centering that pivot, and we have symmetry or radial symmetry. We have a radial count of, I think I'm gonna go for 32, so that we have quite a bit. I'm gonna paint with a dark purple color, maybe no, dark brown color. Okay, so now I'm just painting. This is just Polypaint. All right, and then I'm going to start, using the references. There is a very subtle hint to the sclera of the eye in the Cassowary, so it's barely there. Like, you won't be able to see it, but I'm just gonna add it, and then we can just refine it later on. And then I'm gonna go with a darker color and define the rim of the iris. So that's why I like to use the radial symmetry, because it's very quick and easy. All right, so let's go ahead and go for a more saturated orangey color to define the iris, or the color of the iris. I think it's more of a red color here towards the edges. And I'm just playing with the saturation. So just saturation and values. All right, so that's sort of like the basic palette of the eye or the iris, and then we can start playing around with maybe all the colors towards the center, more saturated, where the pupil would be. And this honestly is my approach to most of the eyes that I have in my sketches. When I'm doing a quick concept, this is how I approach the eyes. In some cases, if I want something a bit more realistic, I would just actually have different geometry, or if I want to render in marmoset and that sort of thing, I would have different geometry for different parts of the eye, like the sclera, the iris, the pupil, the shiny part of the eye, the cornea. But in this case, for these sketches, I think this one is fine. All right, so I'm gonna reduce my radial count to something like an odd number, like 9. I'm gonna select a color similar to what I have in here, and I'm just gonna desaturate that and just start playing, varying some colors in here, maybe even less than 9. Let's go for 7, and a smaller brush. So this is what is probably is going to give me the effect of not a cartoonish eye, more of a adding variations in color. So, and I always go for odd numbers in this case, because having a number of 4 or 8 or just an even number is gonna the radial symmetry and the symmetry in general is gonna be very obvious. So if I just go for an odd number, is probably gonna give me a much better result and more believable. And I keep changing these between 5, 7, maybe 3 now. Go for a slightly darker color, red, and smaller brush size. So because I keep changing between 3, 5, and so on and so forth, it just breaks apart this the symmetry, and also overlaps with previous lines. So let's go back to 7, and I'm gonna use something more like a brown color here, closer to the edge of the rim. So these ones are very subtle. I'm just painting with Polypaint, but with very subtle changes. All right, I'm gonna go back to 5, for example, or yeah, 5. Maybe add more of a highlight here with a yellow. Maybe 3. Very small brush size. And I think I'm gonna add more of a red tone, or like a pink tone here towards the edge. All right, and now I can go ahead and remove the radial symmetry, for example, or actually, yeah, now let's just remove the radial symmetry. And I'm gonna go ahead and light up this a bit more in certain areas. And now that I'm not using any symmetry, I have to just be careful that I keep it within, you know, within the circle, within the iris. And I'm just adding a tiny bit of color. I'm not pressing very hard, just varying that polypaint, that initial blockout of polypaint. All right, now let's go ahead and give the illusion of the concave, effect of the eye. So very quickly, how we doing with time? We have 5 minutes. Yeah, we have plenty for this. So if you look at the eye from the side, oops, that's a horrible eye. Let's do it again. This will be the cornea, right? And then you have all the sclera and the rest of the eye. So I'm exaggerating it, but whoops, let's do it properly, right? And then you have the iris, which is concave. I know this is pretty basic for you guys, but I just want to show you what I'm trying to do. So this will be the pupil, and here you have the iris. Right. So the effect that you most likely see in renders, or like in real life, in like a real eye, is like where there is a light source, you get a highlight of whatever there. That is given because of the shape of the cornea, the concave. But the iris, which is this one, is concave, so it's like that. So what happens is you get reflections here, right, because of the shape of the cornea, and then you get slightly, depending on the position of the light as well, but if you have the light from this point, you will get a shadow, cast shadow around this side of the iris, and then a lighter version around the bottom. So this is something that you would get quite easily if you model and you sculpt the actual pieces of the eye, because they will just react, or the light will react to the shape, the concave or the convex form of the eye. But if you are just painting it, the way, or the easiest way to fake it so that it looks more realistic, would be to just add a highlight to the bottom and a darker version at the top. So let's do that. I'm gonna select a darker yellow, saturated, almost like a brown color, and I'm just gonna add larger brushes, just add that effect here at the top, and then I just keep varying the colors a tiny bit so it's not too obvious, right? Just make it a slightly darker, right? And then we can take some colors around here at the bottom and just make it lighter. So essentially we're just faking that effect of the light bouncing and refracting inside the eye. All right, so that's essentially what that is. Alrighty, so now let's go ahead and get out of solo mode, go back to a white color, and you'll see the eye kind of like disappear, and that is because, remember, we use the set pivot and it's right in the center. So if I just click on C pivot with the eye selected, it's just gonna recenter the pivot of the entire scene. All right, so now we can go ahead and bring in the gizmo and rotate this in place. And again, the reason I wanted to do this early in the process as well is because that allows me to refine the shapes of the outer edge of the not the outer edge, the areas of the body of this mesh that is around the eye, just based on the references that you can see more of. You know, the sclera is just a tiny bit here on the left hand side or the back. You won't be able to see much here, so that just allows me to keep an eye on these type of things, right? And then we can refine. I'll show you just I'll show you what I mean in just a second. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and duplicate this, right? And I'm gonna mirror it. Whoops. I'm going to also freeze subdivision level. I'm gonna mirror that on freeze subdivision level. There we go. So now we have the cassowary with some eyes, which is cool. And let's go ahead and leave it this skin material, go to the actual body, and I'm gonna go to the lowest subdivision level so that it's easy to manipulate. And this is the reason I did the eyes so early in the process, or like just polypainting them, because now I can, basing on the reference, I can see more of like that darker outer edge of the iris here. So that's what I'm trying to achieve. So the eyes are actually quite big in this guy, like what you can see at least. It looks kind of funny from this angle. I'm gonna go to the clay buildup as well, and that's how I can refine. Maybe go out of solo mode. Oh, sorry, get into solo mode, and then just refine some of these shapes for the eyelids. And also we can use the standard brush. I'm gonna reset all my brushes so that we are back to the usual behavior of the standard brush to refine this. And let's push the entire eyes, push the entire eyelid backwards a little bit, just to refine this area of the eye. All right, I think we are good to go. I think I need to leave now. So hopefully you guys have found this process interesting, at least to watch. This is what we worked on today. So we set up all the secondary forms. We did retopology as well as a quick polypaint for the eye. In fact, I'm gonna, just to wrap it up, I'm gonna select the eye, both eyes. I'm gonna select a material like the toy plastic. Make sure that I have material selected, the M, and I'm gonna fill this object with this material. The second one, fill object as well. And now I can just go back to my sculpting material, but now I have the eye with a nice little reflection there, always following, which is kind of like what I wanted. All right, so quick save, and we are gonna leave it there, guys. Thanks so much for stopping by. Let's see if there's any last minute question. Hey Pablo, my PC is an Intel i5, is a 4-core GTX 1050Ti, blah 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 blah. For ZBrush, would you upgrade to get more performance, better CPU, more cores, and more RAM, or better video card? You could, yeah. I mean, if any upgrade would be good for ZBrush. Don't worry too much about the video card. I think the video card is pretty good. ZBrush doesn't rely on the video card at all, so it's all processing power. So if you wanna just have something super smooth, just concentrate on the cores and the processor for ZBrush. Really, that's it. Cool, alrighty. When do you need subdivisions for sculpting? I'm not sure if you saw that part of the stream, but if you just came late, you can go ahead and rewatch it, because I already mentioned that. You know, when to switch to subdivision. Okay. Don't even have ZBrush, but enjoy the stream. Cool, glad you like it. All right, guys, thank you so much again for joining me today. And as I said, if you are part of the email list, I'm gonna send you a link to the new, well, with a little tutorial / tip, like the usual weekly tip. It's coming up later today. And also, I'm going to finish up the ZBrush, the new ZBrush guide. That's gonna be available for everyone in the ZBrush Guides website. But if you're part of the email list, you'll get a link first, of course. And other than that, in terms of admin stuff that I didn't mention at the beginning, I'm planning to open up the Extra Mile course pretty soon, hopefully at the end of this month or beginning of the next month. So if you were interested in, you know, learning this whole approach in way more detail and all the way through the final presentation and the entire pipeline with Substance Painter, Keyshot, all the software, just keep an eye on your email if you are part of the email list. Otherwise, I will let you know in the streams. But it's gonna be pretty cool for the new intake of students of 2020. Other than that, thank you again for the amazing support for the creature pack. I will keep you updated, guys. We have about 10 more days to for you to get it, and I'll keep you updated once I do the donation to the CFA and all that. So thanks again for stopping by, and I'll see you next week. Cheers.